Hi and welcome. Thank you for coming to join us. My name is Andres and I'm a chef and I'm very interested in health. I think food needs to be not only delicious but nutritious, and so that's my focus. And so today's class, we're looking at what is cancer and understanding why our self-healing bodies break down. Our bodies are wonderful systems and they're made to heal themselves. So when we get sick, we have an immune system that takes care of getting rid of whatever foreign thing is in us, a bacteria or a virus or a disease, so that we can be healthy again. And the process takes a while the body gets rid of the bad agents and creates new cells and rejuvenates the body. But we do have a system that supposedly is self-healing. So first, let's understand cancer. Cancer is a term used for over 100 diseases, and it's now, as we've learned more and more, approximating 200 different types of cancers that they've found. And basically, the reason we can use one single word to describe all of them is because they have this in common. It's abnormal cells that divide without control. So our body is constantly creating new cells. Our skin, for example, if I do like this, it's brushing it off. And our eyes have cells that are constantly dying, and so with our intestines and all of our organs. But the body is constantly making new skin cells, new eye cells, new intestine cells. So the whole body is constantly being made anew. But it's being done in a very controlled way. So certain cells rejuvenate very, very fast. For example, the cells on our tongue, in about 2 weeks, have completely changed over. And so you have basically a brand new tongue in 2 weeks' time. Whereas some cells are much slower. But our cells are constantly dividing and creating new cells, but very, very controlled. And the body, in its DNA, knows all of this process and follows it very, very strictly. But then when a cell becomes abnormal, one of the things that it can do is it starts dividing without control. And so it grows and grows and grows. And usually this takes a while till we detect it. And when you detect a certain bump or something, then that's called a tumor. And a tumor is just lots of these abnormal cells together. So I said there's about 200 types of cancers, and we will probably be discovering more as time goes on. But let's try to understand a little bit about the different types. They're basically named after where the cell division begins. So whether it's an organ or it's a type of cell. So if you have cancer that begins in the breast and it grows, then they call it breast cancer. If you have cancer that begins in the liver, then it grows and becomes a tumor, they'll call it liver cancer. But besides just naming it after the organ, which is an easy way for us to understand because it's in the geography of our body, they also call it after the type of cell. So one of the most common one is called carcinoma. And this is a cancer of basically any skin, not only our outer skin, but also the skin of our organs. So the outer layer of our liver, of our kidney, of our stomach, all of these outer layers, if the cancer begins there, then it would be stomach carcinoma. Because it's in the stomach, and since it began on the skin of it, then it would be a carcinoma. The next most common type is sarcoma, and this is when it begins in the connective tissues of the body. So it can be the cartilage, the fat cells, muscle cells, blood vessels, so all of the things that are connective tissue in our body, then it would be called sarcoma. Leukemia is cancer that begins in the bone marrow. Now the bone marrow has a very specific function in the body, and that's where the red blood cells are created. So the blood is also constantly being made anew, and it's mostly done in the bone marrow. So if that's where this cell division begins, then it's called leukemia. And then we have lymphoma, and that's cancer that starts in the cell of the immune system. The immune system's a little trickier because you can't point your finger and say, this is where the immune system is, or this is where the immune system is, or this is, our immune system is all over our body, just like our blood vessels. So there's something called the lymph system, the lymphatic system, and that's pretty much a copy or a very similar system to the blood vessel system. So nutrients are pumped through the blood vessels to all the extremities of our body, and then parallel to that, there is a lymph system, which is also vessels throughout our entire body, but their job is to collect garbage and get it out of the body. So we take nutrients out with the blood, and through the lymph system, we bring the things that aren't supposed to be in the body out. So when cancer begins in the immune system, then it's called lymphoma. So that's a general idea of types of cancers. There are more, I'm not naming them all, but these are some of the more common ones. So something very important to understand about cancer is everybody's cancer is different. So if you have two women who have breast cancer, their two breast cancers look very, very different. And they're very, very unique. They need to be treated in different ways. They're going to be different sizes. Some are going to be more dangerous than others. So breast cancer isn't just breast cancer. You can't generalize it and say, I have the flu and he has the flu. It's the same flu this season for everybody. Absolutely not. So we can have carcinoma breast cancer, and that's breast cancer that starts on the outer tissue. Or we can have sarcoma breast cancer, which is in the connective tissue, so maybe in the fat cells of the breast. So these two types of breast cancers would actually look very, very different and behave quite differently. Just the same, prostate cancer isn't just prostate cancer. Prostate cancers can be carcinomas or sarcomas. So all types of cancers, even though maybe they have the same name, are actually quite different. And every case is going to be very unique and individual. Which also means that what works for somebody to get healed and get rid of their cancer might not work for the other person. So it's very, very unique, and that's why everybody really has to take charge of their own health and figure out, okay, this is what I know, these are my habits, this is what the doctor's recommending, what does my heart tell me that I should do, what do I feel is best. Some people have very urgent situations where maybe a surgery is necessary or highly recommended. Other people have earlier detection where the cancer isn't as advanced, and so maybe you have more time to make changes and do things in less drastic ways. So every cancer is different. So the statistics as of now, 2015, is 1 out of every 2 men in their lifetime will get cancer. And that's a pretty terrifying statistic. That means that I have a 50% chance in my lifetime of going to a doctor and having the doctor tell me, Andres, we detected that you have cancer. And that's a very scary thought. Likewise, 1 out of every 3 women in the US within their lifetime will be diagnosed with cancer. Also very scary, not quite as high, but still a tremendous percentage. So, and that's why it's important, I think, that we do things like these classes, because we need to be educated. We have to know. Knowledge is power, and we have to take control of our health. We have to decide today, how do I want to live so that the chances of not getting cancer are as great as possible. in our body, abnormal cells are constantly being created. So let's say that my body is producing skin cells on a regular basis. Every day that happens. And sometimes my body will create skin cells that are abnormal without any influence from too much sun or from toxic chemicals, just from the process of making millions and millions and millions and millions of cells. Some of them are going to be abnormal sometimes. But most of them are not life-threatening to us. Why? Because my immune system looks through all of these millions of cells and recognizes, oh look, this one's abnormal. We've got to get rid of it. And so it takes it, puts it through the lymphatic system out of my body. And so some people say, well, we all have cancer. And to some extent, that's true. We all have abnormal cells, and possibly some that are dividing quickly. But as long as our body and our immune system get rid of it, then we have nothing to worry about. That's why it's not life-threatening. So in regular daily cell division, sometimes errors are made in copying the DNA, which is the instruction of how our body is to make new cells. And that causes abnormal cells. So that's a perfectly natural thing that happens to all of us. Even as children, as a child's developing and his body's creating cells, some of the DNA is going to get copied wrong. And the immune system will recognize that and get rid of that cell. So besides this natural creation of abnormal cells, there are many other factors that can cause abnormal cell creation. And this is something that's very, very complicated. And even though there's hundreds and thousands of studies being done all the time, billions and billions of dollars has been poured into cancer research, we still don't understand this very, very well. There's some things that we understand quite well and some things that are still a mystery to us. Last year, we started in February, so we had 11 classes, and I get to talk to a lot of people who've had cancer and have recovered, people who are going through cancer. And I think the most difficult question I got last year during these classes was, a lady came up to me after the class and she said, Andres, it seems like I've done everything right. I eat well, I exercise, I don't use very many toxic things in my house, I try to stay away from stress, I live a relatively calm and happy life. It feels like I've done everything right, and still I got cancer. And I had no answer for that. And the truth is that we don't have control over everything. And so that's why the things that we do have control over, we definitely have to make an effort. So what these other factors, besides the normal creation of abnormal cells, what other factors can affect that? Some of them we know quite well. Radiation. So for example, if a radioactive plant breaks down and people are exposed to that radiation, we know very, very well how that process affects the body and that it creates abnormal cells. So we're constantly, all of us, are exposed to radiation every day. Just by being out in the sunlight, we get a certain amount of radiation. People who smoke, there is radiation going into their lungs from this smoking constantly. So radiation, as long as it's in small amounts, you're out in the sun playing with your children, that's okay because your body is going to take care of getting rid of these abnormal cells that are created from radiation. But if you're exposed to a lot of radiation, if you happen to be in a chemical meltdown where there's tons of uranium exposed and you're there for 2 or 3 hours before they get you out of the area, then you're going to get a lot of abnormal cells, and that's when it gets really dangerous. So other toxic chemicals and, Agent Orange that they used during the Vietnam War, it's very well documented how that creates abnormal cell creation. But also things as simple as bleach, for example. If we use bleach too much, if we are constantly on our hands and knees, bleaching the floor without gloves, that is very toxic. And the fumes that bleach creates is very, very toxic. And that causes abnormal cells, creation of abnormal cells. Again, if you do that once a month, then your body, and you have a healthy immune system, your body should be able to get rid of those abnormal cells. But toxic chemicals do create abnormal cell creation. Excessive sun exposure, that's also quite well studied and quite well documented. My grandfather had skin cancer because he was out in the sun all the time, never wore sunscreen. He loved the sun, and as a result, he got skin cancer quite bad. It didn't kill him. Skin cancer is usually quite treatable, but he had a lot of surgery on his face where they would have to cut out parts of his skin, and it's a difficult, painful process. Smoking causes abnormal cell creation. That's also been very well studied, documented. But there are people who smoke all their lives and never get lung cancer. So, maybe these people, even though they're constantly creating these abnormal cells and abusing their body, have an excellent immune system, or are in some way, very healthy and strong. So those are the kinds of things we don't really understand, how two people with very similar conditions, one can get cancer and the other not. So, stress causes abnormal cell creation. Stress not only releases a ton of hormones in our bodies, but sometimes creates inflammation in our bodies. And so that also causes abnormal cell creation. And then ingesting substances that are foreign to our bodies, for example, non-edible non-foods, things that are not food that we eat anyway. So in chocolate, for example, there's wax. In most chocolate, there is wax, and that helps solidify the chocolate enough so that it doesn't melt before we put it in our mouth. So whether that wax is
that all chocolate?
Most chocolate does have wax.
Oh wow.
So, or some other substance that has the same effect as that. So whether that's is really, really terrible for us if you have one chocolate every 2 weeks or something like that. Well, your body probably can your body can probably can take care of that. But if you eat excess chocolate, or lard, French fries are fried in lard, tons of chemicals and preservatives and added salts, things that are not or foreign to our bodies, they create abnormal cell creation. But none of these need to lead to cancer. So our bodies have an immune system that helps protect us and helps heal us. So I've already explained it. Our immune system finds these cells that are abnormal, gets rid of them, and then we're healthy again. So why do we get cancer? That's the million-dollar question. How does this self-healing system that we've been given, that is so wonderful, miraculous, I would say, how does it break down? Well, there are some things that are pretty obvious. Repeated abuse. So maybe when we were young and influenced by our friends, somebody said, "Oh, Andres, you need to try this. You just inhale this thing, and it's tobacco, and it's going to make you feel energized." And so as a child or a teenager, maybe you tried smoking, and then you didn't like it and you never smoked again. But maybe you get hooked, and so you start smoking every single day. That's 365 cigarettes a year, maybe 700, depending on how you smoke. So you are abusing your system repeatedly. That will cause our self-healing process to break down. Excessive exposure to radiation, for example. At a radiation plant, if you are exposed to radiation for a long time and very intense radiation, the radiation can kill you that same day. It can be that drastic. Or excessive exposure to the sun. If you're constantly out in the sun, that can cause skin cancer. Or to stress. If you are in a situation maybe at work where you're constantly under pressure, stress, that kind of excessive exposure or repeated abuse, that can lead to our system breaking down. A constantly compromised immune system. The immune system is very powerful, but it's also very delicate. And our immune system needs things to always be functioning. And things like vitamin C. So why are fruits so good for us? Pineapple and oranges. They have tremendous amounts of vitamin C, and our immune system is dependent on having lots of vitamin C to work well. So a compromised immune system can cause the system to break down. Or a nutrient deficient system. So our bodies constantly are requiring nutrition so that they can rebuild themselves. My body constantly has to be making new skin cells. It has no choice. Otherwise, the skin I have now would fall off and there'd be nothing. So my body has to constantly produce more skin. And in order to do that well, it needs nutrition. So the question is, can we prevent cancer altogether? If we do everything right, if we eat right, if you say, I'm never going to have another chocolate in my life. The truth is that we can't control that. I have a client who has always been very healthy, exercised, eaten well. She stresses a lot, so that's maybe her downside, but grew up in the countryside on a farm, ate very organically, is a very, very good spirit. And she lived in Switzerland for a year, and you think that would be the healthiest thing in the world, to live in Switzerland, in the Alps, breathing the fresh air. Well, she found out like 10 years after she spent that year in Switzerland that the town that she lived in had a lot of radiation. And it was, at the time when she was living there, not known, and it went into the water system, and so people in that town
were exposed,
and lots of people from that town have cancer.
Wow.
And she found out 10 years later, a friend of hers called her and said, there's a lot of research coming about that people who lived in this town now have cancer. So it might be something that even though you were here for a year, you were still exposed to it. You have to be careful with that. So, even if we think we're doing everything right, we don't have control over all the factors. So what we have to do to be intelligent is we have to minimize the chances of getting cancer. And how do we do that? First of all, we have to be aware of our bodies. We all lead very, very busy lives. And we're running around and we have tons of obligations and we're running late all the time and we get up early and we go to bed late at night and still the hours aren't enough because we're very, very busy. And so sometimes we ignore our bodies. And our body is, maybe you have a pain on your hip and it's okay, you ignore it for a while, and sometimes if you go jogging on Saturday morning, it hurts more, but you think, well, at least I went running, that was good for me. And the pain will go away, I'm sure. And then it goes on, and your hip continues to hurt. Your body is trying to tell you something, that something is wrong. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get a hip replacement, but you should definitely go to a doctor and have it checked out. Because maybe it's something quite simple to get healed. Maybe the doctor just says, it's just muscle that is strained. What I'm going to do is give you this potion that you're going to rub on it every day, and for maybe 2 weeks, try to put less pressure on that leg. I know that you love to run, but for 2 weeks, don't run. Give that leg a break, and then the muscle's gonna heal and you're gonna be free of the pain. So we have to be aware of our bodies. In cancer, they say early detection is very, very important. If they find your cancer in stage 1 or stage 2, there's a lot of things that can be done to help eradicate it very quickly. Stage 3 is more dangerous. Stage 4, a lot of people say is a death sentence, and I wouldn't agree with that. I know people who've had stage 4 cancer and have recovered and now lead healthy lives, but it's certainly more dangerous. And that's why they recommend, constantly doing checkups on the breasts, especially as people age, for the men prostate cancer. So going to the doctor just to have a checkup is a good idea, once a year possibly. But also being aware of our bodies. If you have a pain somewhere here and you don't really know exactly what it is, it's not a big deal because it's not a terrible pain, but then you have it again and again, definitely it's something you need to look into, so that if something's wrong, then you can fix it. So being aware of our bodies is the #1 way we can help prevent cancer. Being informed. Not only coming to a class like this where we talk about how to eat healthy and what things we can do to be healthy, but read books, read articles. On television, sometimes they have wonderful documentaries. Scientists are doing a fantastic job in constantly doing research and discovering new things. Doctors also, the techniques that have been developed in medicine are amazing. But also be informed about what is healthy eating. How do I keep my body healthy by exercising? How much overweight is okay and how much is dangerous? So being informed, the more things we know about how to be healthy, the more power we have. So health is not just my doctor's concern. My health is my concern first and foremost. He has 5,000 other patients he's concerned with. So the one person who really needs to take responsibility for our health is oneself. So being informed, the more you know, the better. Making wise choices. And this isn't always easy. It's not always easy to know what is wise. Would I say it's wise to never eat chocolate again? I wouldn't necessarily say that's a wise choice. Is it?
It's a lie.
Because life is also about enjoyment. But should I eat chocolate every single day? I would say that's not a wise choice. Chocolate is a treat. It's something to be had when you're celebrating something special, or if your grandkids come from Seattle to visit and you want to take them out for chocolate ice cream, of course there's a situation for that. But in general, we need to make wise choices. And being informed helps us make wise choices. So you go out to a restaurant and there's a big steak. Well, how much do you know about how steak functions in the body? If you know, then you can make a wise decision about it. Today, I'm really hungry. I feel I need the protein. I'm going to have this steak. Not only that, but I know that it's an excellent quality steak that isn't filled with hormones and other terrible things. So this, I know, is going to be healthy for me. Whereas in another situation, you know that if you order the steak, you're going to overeat and you're going to feel too full. And you don't really need that protein because you had chicken for lunch and beef and chicken for lunch and dinner the day before. And you don't know where this meat came from and its quality, so maybe it's full of antibiotics that your body doesn't need. So by being informed, we can make wise choices. Exercise. Is exercise always good for us? Not always. If we are informed, if we know our bodies, I have problems with my knees because I ran a lot when I was a teenager. And I ran on concrete, which is very, very hard on the knees. So I know my body, I know that my knees are delicate. Whenever I go running on the beach, on sand, which is much softer. And when I do that, I have no problems. If I run on concrete, the next day I'm gonna be feeling pain in my knees. So those are the kinds of wise choices we need to make. Avoiding abusive bad habits.
Yes.
Some of them are very obvious, like smoking. Smoking is an abusive bad habit. Drugs are an abusive bad habit. Alcoholism is an abusive bad habit. Overeating is an abusive bad habit. So if we can avoid those, if we can slowly cut them out of our life, then that helps a lot. One thing that I always had trouble with, and it's taken me many, many years to conquer, but this last holiday, so my problem is during Thanksgiving and Christmas, it's very easy for me to, 1, overeat, and 2, eat too many sweets. And I think it's something that most of us in the Western culture can identify with. Why? Because I love stuffing. And turkey and mashed potatoes and gravy and pumpkin pie is my favorite thing in the whole world.
You're glowing.
So, of course,
You're chocolate.
if there's a lot of this yummy food, then it's easy to overeat. And this last Thanksgiving and Christmas, I actually never overate once. I never got up from the table thinking, oh, I'm so full. All I want to do is sit on the couch and watch football. I never felt that. And that's a great advancement for myself. I am avoiding abusive habits. And I didn't have too many sweets. I love sweets. And I try to minimize just having sweets on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, which helps me. And this Christmas, I had sweets, but I didn't overdo it. So I feel very proud of myself. Avoiding abusive bad habits. But these are not just about eating and about exercising, also stress.
I think stress is a killer.
Stress is very, very bad for our body. So we need to identify, where does stress come from in our lives? Maybe you take your car to a mechanic, and every time you go there, you leave feeling like this. Well, maybe it's time to find another mechanic. which is possibly a little bit more expensive, but you avoid the bad habit of going to a mechanic and feeling tremendously stressed. So we have to identify, where does stress come from in our lives? Is it a habit? Is it something that I can avoid? And if so, then that's what we should do. So another way that we can help avoid getting cancer is eating nutrient-rich foods and drinking water. So eating nutrient-rich foods not only helps our body to create healthy cells, but it also helps our immune system to get rid of any unhealthy cells. And that's very, very key to not getting cancer. Our immune system needs to be constantly able to clean our bodies. And what it needs is nutrition. Actually, I'll go ahead and announce it. The next month's topic is going to be understanding nutrient-rich foods versus energy-rich foods.
Okay, well, that's good. That's
So
good.
it's a very interesting topic. It's one that sometimes can be confusing. So, and that has to do completely with this. Some things are very nutrient-rich, and some things are just energy-rich, which our body needs. Our body needs energy. But there needs to be a balance there. And definitely we need to focus on the nutrient-rich foods and not only have energy-rich foods. So exercising regularly. Exercising not only is something that helps us stay at a healthy weight, but it keeps us healthy. So exercising, when we exercise and the blood is pumping all over the body, what that's doing is it's helping the immune system clean out the body. So exercising has a tremendously important function in renewing and cleaning the body. When you exercise and you're sweating, what is it that's coming out? Why does sweat smell bad? Because it's getting rid of all of the junk that's in our bodies. So we need to exercise in order to try to avoid getting cancer. And then minimizing the ingestion of foreign substances. Medications. Obviously, there's some medications that maybe we can't avoid. But if you are a relatively healthy person and you're constantly taking medications, you should ask yourself, are these really necessary? And don't just stop taking medications because I said it. Definitely consult your doctor, because maybe he knows that there is a very important reason why you're taking this. But I'll give you an example from my life. My mom takes a lot of medications every single day, so many I can't keep track. And my mom is relatively healthy and still relatively young. So she shouldn't need to be taking medications all the time, unless she's sick or there's a specific reason for it. But she doesn't realize that what she's doing is she's filling her body with toxicity and making it more difficult for her body to stay clean and healthy. So, unless you need it, medication is foreign to the body and not good for us. Edible non-foods, so what we were talking about, all of these preservatives, if you get a loaf of pre-sliced bread and you turn it over and you read the ingredients. I make bread, I love bread. Bread is flour, yeast, and water, and that's it. That's the essence for bread. So 3 ingredients. You turn it over and there's 80 ingredients in this loaf of bread. A lot of these ingredients in that bread aren't edible, aren't really nutritious for our food. They're edible that we can take them in, but they're not foods. They're preservatives, they're additives, they're artificial flavors, all kinds of things that we don't need. And then minimizing the ingestion of foreign substances, toxic chemicals. And unless you've really taken the time to think about this, there's toxic chemicals all around. You get up in the morning, you wash your hair, maybe the shampoo you're using is toxic. You get out, you blow dry your hair, you put hairspray on so that it doesn't get messed up in the wind as you go out. Maybe the hairspray you're using is toxic. You put on deodorant, you spray a little perfume to go to the office. Maybe your deodorant is toxic. Maybe your perfume is toxic. You get to the office, you put on some hand sanitizer. You don't know what you touched on the way to work that was unhealthy. Maybe this hand sanitizer is toxic.
The hand sanitizer?
Yeah. We need to take responsibility for these things. You need to pick up the hand sanitizer bottle, look at the list of ingredients, and figure out, is this healthy for me or not? Because some things are healthy and fine to use, natural products. Some things are not. So we need to minimize the toxic chemicals that we are getting into our body. There's some things, living in Miami or any big city, we are going to be breathing in car exhaust fumes. We can't help it. If we walk out onto the streets, there's a certain amount of car exhaust that is everywhere, and I'm constantly breathing it in. So I'm already getting toxic chemicals just by living in Miami. So I can't control that unless I want to move to the countryside, in which the air is probably healthier. But there are a lot of things that I can control. Your toothpaste, maybe it's toxic. And I'll tell you a secret. People who use drugs, they like to put the drug right on their the gum. Why? Because that's a direct passage to your blood cells. So if you're constantly brushing your teeth with toxic toothpaste, you're putting it right on your gums every single day, 2 times a day, or 3, or whatever, how many times you brush your teeth. So that toxicity, even though you think it's innocent, your dentist recommended this toothpaste, you have to take responsibility for the toxins that you're taking into your body. And it's, it takes a long time to learn. I started about 10 years ago starting to get interested in this and figuring out, okay, well, I like to use deodorant, but what type of deodorant should I use? And I found that most deodorants have aluminum, which is terrible for our bodies. It works, why? Because it stops the pores that are supposed to put out all the junk that's in my body. Why do I want to stop up the pores that help my immune system clean me out? Well, some companies are just trying to make a buck. And that's why we need to be informed, make wise decisions. But one way to try to avoid getting cancer is by minimizing the toxins that we use. And then the last way to avoid getting cancer is keeping our immune system healthy. Our immune system is tremendously important. As we've heard, we are going to get abnormal cell creation in our body, and our immune system needs to be able to take care of that. So somebody who has cancer, if they start eating right, if they help their immune system strengthen, the body can help naturally reduce the size of the cancer and eventually get rid of it. So there's lots of people who have helped their recovery from cancer just by strengthening their immune system. It's not the only thing I recommend, but certainly a very, very important one. So, avoiding regular body inflammation. I read a very interesting article that talked about red meat. And I'm not talking about when you order the meat rare and you have it red. I'm talking about red meat in general. Lamb, cow meat, pig meat. There are some sugars in red meat that are foreign to our bodies. That animals, lots of different animals, create this sugar, and it's natural to them. But when we eat it, it doesn't matter how healthy this red meat is. When I eat red meat, some of these sugars that are foreign to my body enter the body. And what does it do? It causes inflammation. Because my immune system identifies these sugars as foreign and says we need to get rid of them. And yes, my immune system eventually gets rid of them. But it causes inflammation in the body. So if you're somebody who loves red meat and you're constantly eating red meat, you just have to be aware that's causing inflammation in your body on a regular basis. Stress causes inflammation in the body. So avoiding stress is tremendously important in keeping our immune system healthy. They've done research and they say that one of the biggest factors affecting the immune system is stress. So one of the best things that you can do, if you have the choice of drinking a glass of orange juice and getting rid of your stress, which is better for your immune system? Getting rid of your stress. So it's that essential. So this is the website for my business. It's called The Special, and we make vegetarian healthy meals for people Monday through Friday lunch. So if anybody's interested, please let me know and I'll give you a flyer. And then this is the website for this class and this group, Cancer Prevention and Recovery. And everybody's welcome, whether you have cancer or not. If you know somebody who has cancer and want to just be informed and be there for them. If you know somebody who's going through that or somebody who is interested in being healthy, invite them to come. Every month we have a different topic, and our goal is just to live healthier, richer lives.